Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of the CLAT podcast. If this is the first time you're watching us, hello. My name is Janardhan Pashupati. I'll be your host for this podcast series. To just introduce myself a little bit, I was lucky enough to get ranked 38 in the CLAT back in the day in 2013. I went to National Law School of India University, and I've had the privilege of mentoring hundreds of students through the CLAT cracking process, one of whom is here with us today. Aakash, who got ranked 132 in the CLAT this year and will also be going to National Law School of India University. We'll keep some time perhaps for any questions that Aakash may have about law school, but I've seen his journey up close in for quite some time, and there's some really interesting both insights and as well as some struggles and some decisions he made along the way that I think will be really helpful and instructive to students. So hi Aakash, how are you doing?
I'm good, sir. It's great to meet you. Thank you for having me here.
Right. It's been a while, man. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been too long.
It's been literally, yeah, it's absolutely been too long. So yeah, so why don't you, if you I mean why don't you I've given you a little bit of an introduction, but if you'd like to introduce, give yourself some more of an introduction.
Yeah, sure. So, hi guys, my name's Aakash Bedi. I am in the grade 12. I study in Delhi Public School. I live in Bangalore. I've lived here for the past 10 years. So I do consider myself a Bangalorean. Like Sir said, I got rank 132 this year in CLAT, and I'm extremely excited to go to NLS. If you ask me about my stream, that's a bit more of a complicated answer, which I guess we'll get to eventually.
Sure.
But I'm just here to discuss about my journey with Sir, and hopefully I can impart whatever little value I have to you guys that may help you in your own preparation. So yeah, extremely excited to be here.
Right. Awesome, Akash. And this just throws me back to all those classes where your elocution was so intimidating to the other students in terms of your preparation and your desire to go after it. And I think it's become clear to anyone watching this. So we had a lot of fun in class actually, and I think that's a good place to start to keep it
Yeah.
fun. So there were the GK quizzes that we did, and then we had so many rounds of moot courts and other activities that we did. Did I do an MUN with you or your class? Yeah, we did
Yeah,
an
yeah. I
MUN
was
as
there
well.
for the MUN.
Yeah. You were China in a situation, if I remember correctly.
I was China once and I was India the other time, if I'm not
Oh, you
wrong.
were India. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. You were India the other time. In the Russia
Yeah, I
Ukraine.
remember it was the Russia-Ukraine war that was the agenda, and I was India. Yeah, I remember.
And what were some of the cases that you mooted in our class?
So I remember the case I got with, if I'm not wrong, it was with Arya
Yeah.
way back in CL Jayanagar. It was a
Yeah.
Caroline test that
Yes.
was under the international law section, the Caroline test. Your classes were always the most fun classes in CL. I remember whenever it was Janardhan sir's class, it'd be a full house. People I'd
Yeah.
never seen before in CL Jayanagar were always there just for Janardhan sir's class.
Oh, I didn't know
So
that. Yeah.
yeah, no, your classes were always full. Everyone made it a point to be there for your classes.
I appreciate that. Although I'm that comedian, and I did do stand up for a while. Who's like the two people who leave in the middle of the show. I think about more than the 100 people who showed up. So I do
Yeah,
remember the people who left, but that's very kind. And there was this the CL Jayanagar Koramangala were quite close by, and it was the largest compliment as a teacher. When you were in CL Koramangala, there were some people in CL Jayanagar. I mean, some people were. I love those people in Jayanagar. And whenever I had a class at one, you would be at you would be there, despite it not really
yeah,
being and bunk some other class also. And
yeah,
it was a huge compliment. So to some extent, this will be a love fest. It doesn't need to be. Feel free to. It doesn't need to be. So many of these videos which promote uh, coaching centers can be very clinical and be like, it was only because of you that I made this. And I'm like, that is clearly not true in the case of Aakash and so many students that I taught and I had the privilege of teaching. So, by the way, and I've completely forgot to mention, this is one of those videos. This podcast is being brought to you by Target Success. The reason I forgot to mention this, is because I'm not good at this yet. And we will get back to it later. But really, this is about Aakash and his journey. I genuinely got just so excited to talk to Aakash again that I forgot. So, yeah, the Caroline test. Yes, the turn of the century case. And which position did you end up taking?
I took the position that preemptive self-defense, that the Caroline test is not a valid premise for preemptive
Right.
self-defense.
And you argued some very, like, I remember you had 3 points,
Yeah,
and the first 2 points were very strong, and you were basically upending us more than a century of really established international law in
yeah,
a very clinical
that was what I was going for.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so endless is going to be a fun place for you. So,
Uh,
I mean, so walk us through when you decide to do law. I think that's a good place to start. When you decide to do law and how you came to that decision.
so honestly, just being being completely frank, whenever someone asks me why you wrote the CLAT, why you decided to do law, I never have a proper answer because it's just something that's been inside of me ever since I was a kid.
Okay.
So since I was 9 years of age, it's just been in my head for no like obvious reason why. There's no like immediate reason why, but I've always had it in the back of my head that I want to be a lawyer. And up until I would say the ninth grade, it was just law and nothing else. I did waver every once in a while. I did think about some other career paths, but I always came back to law. And I think two major events really cemented but when I took CLAT seriously and when I started taking law seriously. So the first was when I started doing Model United Nations in school. That was a very, very big turning point for me because for those of you who don't know, Model United Nations is basically a simulation of the United Nations where you're supposed to represent a country and debate and discuss and deliberate on an agenda. So that was a very big turning point for me, as I think it is for a lot of law
Yeah.
aspirants. I've noticed a pattern that a lot of mothers eventually become lawyers or try to pursue law, and the inverse is also true. A lot of
Yeah.
lawyers have either done one before or are running in college.
And the
So months
maths
were
of that
turning.
statement is completely wrong. So it's a good setup. Yeah.
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 So yeah,
Right.
months were a very big turning point for me because that's what, for the very first time, exposed me to international law. International law has always been one of my most keen areas of interest. That's why even when we reflect back on the Caroline test, I think about that moot quote so fondly because of just how fun it was. International law has always been extremely interesting to me, and I think Muns were what introduced me to that. I remember doing courses on Coursera and edX between different months on international law. This
Wow.
is way before I even knew the CLAT existed.
Right.
So law has
Wow.
always, yeah, so law has always been a very, very big source of interest for me. And the second event that solidified it was I joined CL and I joined the process of CLAT because after a point in 11th, I decided I have nothing else to do. And this is the best option for me. I'm good at reading, I'm good at writing, I really love it. So I might as well go for it. But I think the second turning point was actually my very first class with you
Oh, really?
because I still remember that funnel, that reverse pyramid that you drew for us in class. So for those of you who don't have context, I think Sir would explain it better than I
No,
would
no, no,
actually.
go
So
for it because I want to know because it's an experience for everyone to see that funnel, and different people
yeah,
get different experiences out of it. So I want to know
yeah.
what your take was on it. Yeah, go.
Uh,
Yes,
so
yeah.
so for context, for everyone who's watching the reverse pyramid was essentially a shape like this, obviously. And at the top were all the 60 to 80,000 children who would attend the CLAT in a given year.
Yeah.
And as you went further and further down on the pyramid, the number obviously reduces and it trickles down to an extremely small fraction of the original 60,000 that would actually attempt the CLAT. And Sir put it in an extremely eloquent way, which was that these are the 60,000 who are writing, out of which 20,000 are actually studying for it, out of which another 5,000 are actually giving their 100%, out of which 1,000 actually have a shot, i.e., the number of seats that are there, and might be
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
watching
yeah,
the debate.
yeah, yeah,
And then I think the final piece of the pyramid were the people who actually get into NLS.
yeah.
So that's what put a lot of things into perspective for me. which was that there's immense competition here, but there's also a very real opportunity to
Yeah.
succeed in something that I'm so passionate about. And for some reason, that ignited the fire within me to really go after CLAT with everything I have. And so, yeah, that is the not so brief story of why I decided to do law and why I decided to attempt the CLAT.
Well, so firstly, I mean, I know that that funnel speech always has an impact on students, and a
Hmm.
lot of students get really, or at least hopefully has an impact. And a lot of times I see the impact, and
Yeah.
a lot of students get really scared by that speech, by that idea that which bucket do I fall into and will I make it? But this speaks to many attributes of yours that really make you such a good competitor and made you helped you succeed in the CLAT, which is that you saw not just the top of the funnel, to use the marketing term, but also you saw not just all those missed shots, but you also saw that the ball does go through the net like
Hmm.
200 times, right? And
Yeah.
I can be one of those people if I
Hmm.
do the work and if I give my focus to it. So, it's been so long since I've given the funnel speech. This brings back memories. And it's
Uh,
really, it warms my heart. It's really great that that was able to kick, because I do remember, uh, to put it one way, I do remember you taking this turning into a bit of a PTM, but I do remember you taking your like preparation a little casually. You were like, I got this, right?
yeah.
मुझे अंग्रेजी आती है, and I'm good at it. And in this class,
Uh,
and in that classroom, you were the king. You were doing pretty well, right?
hmm.
So I'm really glad once you saw those numbers and once you saw that real trickle down, to use that phrase, that
Yeah.
how it really, how, and obviously it breaks my heart as a teacher, but how few people are actually going to make it into NLS and
Hmm.
what that means. And did I accompany? So I'm really glad that kicked you into gear in many ways. Did I give the ticket speech as well at that time?
I don't think so. No, I
Oh,
don't
okay,
think so.
cool. So I saw your expressions, and so many people got really scared. So I decided not to give the ticket speech. At some point,
Uh,
you may hear about it in this podcast. It's not the kindest of speeches to many people. Uh, so uh,
but
uh,
I think that's
yeah,
something that's necessary, and I really like that about you, which is you should be willing to both tell and listen to the hard truths, which is that competition is inevitable in any entrance exam, and I think in any venue of life. I don't want to be too preachy
yeah,
here, but
yeah,
my point being that it doesn't matter what you want to do. If you want to do BA, if you want to do science, if you want to do JE, NEET, no matter where you go, there will be competition.
yeah,
You can either look at the glass half empty or the glass half full. You can think of it as I have a very, very likely, very big chance, and it's more than likely that I will fail, but it's also possible that I will
yeah.
succeed and I will emerge on top. And I think it's just a matter of perspective. And your reverse pyramid of funnel speech really kicked that into perspective for me.
I'm really, really glad to hear that. I'm really glad
Yeah.
to hear that because like I said, for a lot of students, it gets scary, and there will be hopefully, I mean, there will be a lot of 10th class, 11th class students listening to this, and it's such a uphill battle after 10th.
Mm,
The 11th class syllabus, especially in CBSE, I can't speak for other curriculums as much, but it's really a total ramp up from that point. And preparing and the expectations of the individual student change so drastically that
mm,
you go from getting, people don't really care what you get in sixth, seventh, eighth. Yes, your parents are angry at you, and they want you to do better. But your 10th board marks come and it's just a grade, really. But after 10th, really, I mean, for JE, it starts even sooner, of course. But after 10th, really,
yeah.
for a lot of students, it's like they're like a deer caught in headlights, where they have so much more to do. They're going through so many changes in their personal life, in their academic life, and suddenly, they've got to perform or show up at a level that they just haven't had to, and it breaks people. It
Mm,
breaks 17-year-old, 16-year-old men and women. and it's
Yeah.
just all the other genders. So it's really this. So do you want to speak to that for maybe? Do you want to speak to that for a minute as to why it became like how it became what it became, that speech or any movements around it really kicked you into gear as opposed to disheartening you, or how you dealt with those increased expectations as a 17-year-old who in the pandemic and things like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So for me, okay, there's a lot of things to this, but number one, I feel like a lot of what really pressurizes students at that age, like you very rightfully said, is parental pressure. Pressure from their parents, from their relatives to perform well academically in extracurriculars, whatever it may be. But that pressure is existent and like a sword hanging over their heads for
Right.
most people, at least. Not for everyone, but for most people. I was lucky enough to be one of those people whose parents don't pressure them, but rather my parents gave me a lot of autonomy. They put a lot of trust and faith in me that you do whatever you want, and if things go left, we're here for you. But we want you to take control of your own life, take the steering wheel. You're old enough, you're smart enough, and just figure out what you want to do with your life on
That's
your
really
own
cool.
terms.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough, and I'm extremely grateful to my parents for that.
Right.
So that was one aspect of the pressure that was eliminated for me, which was I didn't have my parents and what they expect from me to think about. So when I was making my decision, it was completely what do I want to do with my life?
Right.
And I think that's something that everyone should do, even if your parents are pressurizing you. I think at the end of the day, all parents want what's best for you. So have a candid conversation with them, and things should work out.
Right. You're going to cause a lot of people to get beaten up with that advice.
I hope not. I hope not. I'm just trying to help.
Yeah.
But
Right.
uh, another aspect, which I can't speak for everyone, but it's something very personal for me, is maybe you've noticed this. I'm an extremely competitive person by
Yeah.
nature. When it was, I've played sports in the past, so I think maybe that's where I get it from. I'm a younger brother, so maybe that's where I get it from. But I've always had that chip on my shoulder that I need to prove myself at whatever I do. And I've always like moved from one thing to the another extremely restlessly, not able to figure out what I want to stick to until I got to CLAT. So first it was months, and maybe it changed in the
Right.
bit, but months were another constant for me for about 2 to 3 years. And then I'm extremely glad I found CLAT because, like I said, it was something I enjoyed to do. Studying for CLAT wasn't a burden for me; it was actually pleasure. Like I enjoyed it. I enjoyed studying for CLAT. So obviously the fact
Right.
that I liked what I was doing helped. And also the fact that I really wanted to prove myself and succeed. That's what helped me a lot and removed a lot of the pressure from me. Of course, I didn't remove it completely. The pressure to succeed and the pressure, I would say it's not so much the pressure to succeed, but the pressure not to fail.
Yeah.
That is what
Yeah.
um, that is what breaks you even more than the pressure to succeed.
For sure.
The the expectations that everyone has when you actually commit yourself to it, even the expectation of the people who are supporting you, that is what breaks you much far more than I would say the expectation of succeeding. I don't know why I'm getting so
No, no,
philosophical,
no, no.
and
I mean, I asked the question and it was a very Gyani.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I,
yeah.
I'm just trying to answer in the best way I can. But I would say to sum it up in a brief manner, think of yourself and just do what you enjoy and enjoy what you do. It's as simple as that.
Right. So, I mean, you touched on a lot of points. How do you did put a lot of pressure on yourself. In fact, to my mind, you put, I mean, I'm glad it worked out, of course, but to my mind, you put too much, like I was always, I was always looking at you, and I'm pretty sure I told you this before and many times that you're doing well, and I was cheering you on at many points. So
Yeah,
but you was consistently dissatisfied. So
yeah.
that speaks to the chip on the shoulder. So do you? I think there's an important lesson here, both life and for competitive examinations. And as we've spoken about, life is a competitive endeavor. That
Hmm.
satisfaction is the anathema of success in many ways.
Hmm. So,
Right.
so
Yeah. So
yeah,
even when you're getting 90, 100, you just weren't happy with it. So
yeah.
but did how did you not burn out or break down, as because that's also a really viable, likely option in that scenario. Yeah.
I would say I did. I never felt completely, I didn't have a proper breakdown wherein I was, not able to function
Yeah.
and just in extreme emotional distress. I didn't have that, luckily. I don't know why. I'm not saying I'm good at managing stress. I don't think I am. Like you said, I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. I think after a point, I was compensating for all the pressure my parents weren't putting on me
Right.
by putting more pressure on myself.
Right.
But I did get burnt out at multiple points of time. Like as you remember better than most
Yeah.
people, I
Sure.
was extremely frustrated throughout my
Yes. Yeah.
journey, especially when I was plateauing in the first 6 months
Yeah.
at 90, 95, 98. For
Yeah.
6 whole months, I was just at 95, 98, 99, drop back to 88, go back to 97, 96.
And
And
this
that
this
was
is a very
extreme.
common story. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think a lot of people get stuck in the 90s.
Yeah.
And it is far, my very first mock, I got 48.
Yeah.
The very first mock I wrote, I got 48. And I went to 98 in about two mocks.
Correct.
Uh, so it's extremely easy to go from the 40s to the 90s, but it's 10 times harder to go from the 90s to the hundreds.
Yeah.
Much, much harder. It's just, I think, the law of diminishing returns. It's easier to amass all the gains in the beginning, but the further and the farther you go, the harder it is to progress.
Yeah.
So that was definitely there for me, and that was a major, major reason of my frustration and my burnouts. And I was extremely, extremely agitated after a point, but it all worked out in the end. So
Right.
I think something that may help people is that burning out is a part of the process. You have to find something that helps you. Obviously, if you can find a way to not burn out, that would be optimal. But I think burning out is also an indication that you're pushing yourself past your limit. And something I noticed with myself is I was burning out extremely quickly in the beginning, but
Yeah.
that threshold of the
Yeah.
amount of work I could put in without getting burnt out kept on increasing.
Yeah.
So I think that is true. Push yourself, but if you get burnt out, obviously, please don't keep going. Take care of your mental health. That's that. I mean,
You
I
need
think
to do
that's
that.
above
Yeah.
everything else. That's above your reputation, above your scores.
Right.
Talk to your friends. Talk to your parents. I had extremely supportive friends and family, luckily, and I also have, I would say, certain cathartic hobbies like working out, like playing
Right.
basketball, that helped me to blow off some steam regularly. I would say on the daily, so I didn't, over the long run, I wasn't building up too much stress. So I would say have some hobbies that are cathartic. Like working out is great. I really enjoy that. Most people really enjoy that. In fact, one of my friends who scored very well, got a double-digit rank. He also worked out regularly, and he also concurred with me when I said that it helps you blow off steam and it helps keep you sane throughout your preparation. So it's just a very delicate balance. You should know your mind, know how far you can push it, what soothes your mind, what frustrates your mind, and just play on your strengths and make sure you're doing well at all times and keep going hard.
Right.
There's no substitute for that.
Uh, Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is a such an interesting conversation compared to all the other episodes, because we haven't dug deep into just this aspect of the mental frustration and anguish that preparation can put on a person, and the ways to deal with that. I think
Yeah.
Akash is 1000% right here. Uh, Put pressure on yourself, but don't break in that process.
Hmm.
Have hobby. Okay, so the CLAT is not the JE. I think I'm I'll keep saying that, and I think we've established that. And
Thank
so
God it is.
yeah, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely. In many ways, in many ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
None of us can do maths, but yeah, but this, but have hobbies. Like really, you don't need to spend apart from the last month, apart from the last 90 days, 1 month around that time. You really don't need to spend more than 6 hours. We're talking about the last 90 days. You really don't need to spend more than 6 hours a day. You need to be very strategic in how you spend that time. But I think Akash has hit the nail on the head. And I mean, you can see it now. If I hope you can see it now. If you can't, then just go back and watch it. You can see it in his face, and I saw it throughout the process. And it was obviously heartbreaking as someone who supports him, but it was also uh, it was really nice in a way to see someone pushing themselves so aggressively, right? Like just unwilling to, and I mean, we've already said this, unwilling to be okay with where they're at, right? And this is hurtful. This can be hurtful to your prep. This can be hurtful to your eventual exam. I've seen many people really break in the exam, and I think that's a good next topic to pick up, which is with all this going through your mind, how did you not end up breaking in the exam? And we'll get to that in part two of this episode.